Hi guys, welcome back on the channel. Today I have with me, I'm very happy to have with me my friend, medieval historian Rob Jones. We're going to talk about his upcoming medieval skirmish rule set called, Rob, please do it for me because I cannot pronounce this, although you told me before.
No problem. It's Écorcheurs. Écorcheurs. So that's the name that the French gave to the sort of lordless men who ravaged France during the 100 Years' War, who stripped the land bare, scoured it, flayed it, and that's what the word means in French. So they're the flayers, the skinners, the people who strip the land. So that's where I took the name.
Like free companies or routiers or something like this?
That's it. Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start. I mean, we're going to talk about the rules. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the mechanics, so the friends of the channel can understand these rules, and then we can go when you're going to publish them, and if you have any plans in the future. Obviously, still your early stages. So, can you give me how the rules came about, with whom you coordinated? I mean, just give me a brief description of what happened before, and we can go to the mechanics later.
Yeah, sure. So, couple of things. I'm medieval historian. You know, I've been thinking about medieval warfare. I've been wargaming for far too long. I came up with blood and horse droppings, the big battle stuff. Developed that.
You have the rules, yeah.
And I have those rules. They're out online. Find it on my website. Okay. The skirmish game was.
I'll put all the links. Whatever links you want, I'll put them in the description of the video so people can follow everything.
That'd be cool. So yeah, so I've done the big battle rules. That's great. I love skirmish gaming. So I've been tinkering with some skirmish games, played a lot of Todd Kirshner's Pig Wars back in the day. Really good set of very basic early medieval skirmish gaming. I have an annual event. So my birthday, every week, the weekend of my birthday, I bring a group of gamer friends over. We spend the weekend playing games, chatting, just enjoying ourselves. And so I threw together this rule set as one of the games we were going to play over that weekend. We started off on 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, played our first game. People went, oh, this is really good, but that needs tweaking. We need to think about that. Oh, what about this? We ended up playing it the whole weekend. We played about 18 games over the whole weekend. Got up first thing Sunday morning and people were going, yeah, I've been thinking about that rule you did there. And I wonder if we try this. So we developed the game over a weekend. And then one of my friends suggested, actually, he said, I think the guys at Gripping Beast would like this set of rules. Why don't you take it up to them? Now, I know the guys, I've been in contact before, really lovely guys. So I took it up to Beast Towers, showed them the game. They liked it, and they took it on board and said, we'd like to publish this with you. So that's where we are. That was just over 2 years ago. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, I know the sword point team of Gripping Beast were very good friends because I used to play sword point a lot. And they're nice guys and a big group. They have a lot of rules. They have features. They purchased Front Rank, I think, last year. I mean, they're quite a big group, and that's good.
They're a growing concern, but they're a really nice, friendly, passionate group of gamers as well. So they love their topic. They've been doing it a long time. But they love their figures, they love their rules, and they're a good bunch of people to work with and to kind of share a beer with once or twice. I think it did help me that they've just bought the Front Rank range at that point, so they have 100 Years War figures, War of Roses range. So yes, they've got Saga, they've got Spear Point or Sword Point, sorry, and they wanted to bring in the options for another set of rules that was different again. And I think that's it. They've got a good eye for what's new, what's different, and what works. So yeah.
Yeah, but what you mentioned before, and this is what 4 or 5 years ago when I had a chat with Rick Priestley, and we're talking, obviously, he's done too many things, but we talked at the point about Hail Caesar, and exactly what you described was how Hail Caesar started, and is one of the most successful big battle rule sets. It started, the guys were trying to find a game that suits them to play between friends, and while they were playing, they were changing the rules. They were saying what works. And exactly what you described for me was what happened with Hail Caesar, a very successful, maybe the most successful big battles rule set out there. I think it's very popular. I think guys like it. I mean, it's easy, it's fast. But what you explained to me, I think it's something that is a recipe for success. That it's something you like to play, and you know, it's not like you just sit down and devise the game based on mechanics you have in mind. It's based what you like. So let's start with the game a little bit. So what historical, you are a historian, obviously you will be very specific on this. What historical span does the game have?
Okay. So April the 1st last year, I put a little post up making this very clear to people. I said, lots of people asking me, you know, can I use these 100 Years War rules for my Normans? Can I use them for my Vikings? Can I use them for my Wars of the Rose? And I said, no. I said, in fact, I've done a deal with Banksy, the artist, and the same system he used for his painting, that when it's sold, it shredded half itself. I've arranged with Gripping Beast to put that in the rules. So if you use these rules for anything other than the 100 Years War, they will automatically self-destruct. That's not what's going to happen. So the rules themselves that'll be published are built around the 100 Years War and around the midsection. So we'll talk a little bit about the scenarios and campaign that accompany it. They are mid 14th century. That's 1346, the Cressy campaign. That's how they're focused and centered. That having been said, you could use these rules quite easily for any pre-gunpowder and early gunpowder. So you can use them from probably from Rome right the way through to the late Middle Ages into the early modern. I've got some ideas for that coming up if these things work. I'm like most wargamers, I've got boxes of figures from different periods that I'm itching to paint and get on the table. These rules in their base concepts are generic enough that you can do that. So for example, we talk about armor values in these rules. There are only 3 levels of armor. There's fully armored, part armored, unarmored. If you're fully armored, that could be full plate. It could be white harness from the 15th century, but it could equally be a guy in full mail from the 12th, or indeed, someone in a back and breast and lobster pot from the 17th century. So you can span that. A bow is a bow is a bow. If it's in the 14th century, it's likely to be an English war bow, but equally, if we're talking 12th century, it's going to be the bow. And as long as you're not trying to mix periods, which of course as a historian, that's just an anathema to me. That's not how I work. But if you're working within the period, the rules should work fine for anything. So play with what you've got, I think, is one of the messages here.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's something I'm saying, and this you mentioned it, is that basically rules have, when they're talking about armor, it is basically the comparison between armors. So the fully armored could be full plate for the 14th century. So full plate was the best armor. For the 15th century, for the 14th century will be partial plates. And for the Baron's War will be chainmail. So it's basically the relationship between the denomination of armor that have the meaning. So you can really use it in any medieval era, and accordingly, the fully armored will be the best armor of the period. So maybe it will be chainmail for the Dark Ages and we talk about this. We're talking about that chainmail is the plate of the Dark Ages, for example, the rich people have. So yes, this is something that people don't understand, that it's very easy to not house rule. It's very easy to use these rules in a medieval, of course, setting. It's a skirmish game. It's going to be, it can be accommodate any medieval era, but you're focusing specifically in the, let's say, crazy Poitiers wars, middle of the 100 Years War.
Yeah, so we're looking mid 100 Years War.
And how big of a skirmish game it is? I mean, do you have limitations?
So the force, the retinue that you're centered around is 20 figures, more or less. So the rules have been factored as if you had a 20-figure unit. Now you can scope that up a little bit, down a bit. You need to think about command and control, and we'll talk about how that works. But generally, I'm looking at a 4 foot by 4 foot table and 20 figures aside, and that's the kind of size of force. So we're looking very small scale skirmish, and that has some impact on aspects of the command and control, the shooting and things like that. We're looking at this very detailed space. Table space, in terms of 4 foot by 4 foot table, the ground scale, I'm working on the same ground scale as a 28 mil figure. So we're looking 156, 160 in terms of your ground ratio. So your table is only about 80 feet, 80 to 100 yards in distance. So you think about and so all of the terrain you're putting on, you're thinking about that very small scale skirmish, quite detailed little actions rather than anything too big.
So let's say 20 figures. Is it one unit, or it's more than one unit?
So the format is you have your retinue. That could be the traditional, English indentured retinue. So your captain, the man at arms with his standard bearer, maybe, what are we talking about? Maybe 13, 14 archers and a couple of guys with choppy weapons. Or it could be a French urban militia force, mixture of guys with spears, crossbows, some Befeziers, and again, a captain figure slightly better equipped. Some, again, perhaps high-ranking gentry of the town, or maybe a nobleman. I've also got lists for if you want to field 20 fully armored French mounted men at arms, it's in there. You can do that. Or maybe some Breton, for want of a better word, guerrillas. There are lots of opportunities there, and I'm quite keen that although I've provided some sample retinues to kind of get people started. Again, being a historian, I'm keen for people to go off, do some reading, find an action, a period, a nobleman, something that they can latch onto that really excites them, and then to do a little bit of reading and produce their own. There are no formal army lists here, and there are no formal unit sizes. So your retinue is about 20 figures, but if it's a little more, a little less, that's fine. Whatever you've got, make it work. Within that, so there are no subunits. So your 20-man retinue is what you have, but what you have there is you have leaders and you have men. So you might have your captain, great, he's got the leadership trait. You'll then maybe have one or two other guys with that leadership trait, that ability to have men follow them. Now that could be because they are, what would you say, maybe a vintner, a man with a formal leadership role, but it could equally be the guy that everybody turns to in a fight, the one who's got that little bit of charisma that people turn to, who can pull people with him. And that's it. So when you start the game, you run the game by a series of actions. So you choose a group of figures. That could be one individual figure, or it could be a group of those figures centered around one of your leaders, and you tell them to do something. And that could be to move, it could be to shoot, it could be to rally, or a couple of other sort of specialist actions you can do. But that's basically it. If you do that action and you are successful, so if you move and none of your men get struck or stunned, and we'll explain what that means in a moment, basically injured, or if you shoot and you strike or stun the opposition, or if you rally everything you want to do, then you get to do something again. And that could be with the same group of figures, or a completely new group of figures, or any mix. So you can reform your subunits each action. So it's got a very fluid command and control process. That, to me, represents what a skirmish level combat, and certainly a medieval skirmish level combat, should be. There are no formal units here. There are just someone telling a group of people, go and do this now, but then siphoning off others to do something else. And it's that sense of fluid command and control. That was one of the key things I wanted to get to grips with. Other rule sets out there, lots of units, subunits. So move your men at arms, then move your group of archers. That's fine. To my mind, that produces a game which is a big battle in miniature. It doesn't feel quite skirmishy enough for me.
Yeah, a big battle with few minutes.
With few miniatures, yeah, that's how it feels to me. And so I was looking for something that was a bit more organic, a little bit more. So I think I've said this before. I'm a rubbish wargamer. I lose games.
Yeah, me too. I always lose.
Yeah, always losing. And you play against yourself quite a bit. So,
You asked me very good to lose by.
So for me, what's really as important is telling a good story. If I can get involved in the game and it tells a really good story, I get involved. It doesn't matter to me whether I win or lose then. I can just get integrated. So what I'm looking for in a skirmish game is something that also tells that really good story. And again, that organic command and control helps to tell the narrative. It's sort of expand that story. So that's where we start. So that's your forces, 20 men, a couple of leaders and bits and pieces. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt your process of thought, but I wanted to make something. This is excellent. So basically, because we are talking about routiers, because we're talking about free companies, is the consistency of a unit or of a command, whatever we call it, is basically historically whatever we could find. Whoever came and joined. It could be 20 archers and a couple of peasants, one man at arm, one spearman. So basically whatever you can find. So this consistency gives variety. This is very nice. And also, and this is historically accurate, obviously, because these routiers were not units. Whoever they wanted to join, thieves, outlaws, were joining them. One had a knife, one had a spear. So this variety within this unit, I'll call it unit, is something very interesting. And the other thing you're saying really excited me is that within your unit, you can order different men to do different things, correct? Is that correct? How I'm understanding it? So again, something very accurate, because I will tell my longbowmen to shoot, my archers, my spearmen maybe to hold the ground, maybe the man at arm who is very good at fighting to charge. So you have this ability to do this within the unit, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So this is very. Yeah,
that's good. You have real fluidity in terms of what. So you could, have bring forward your whole 20 men, and then maybe lead that group of archers off to the right to set up an ambush point, whilst the rest of the group move off somewhere else. So you've got that ability just to parcel your men around without having to think, oh my god, all I've got is that I've got one unit of archers who have to go over here. But then what do I do with that unit of men at arms? You can split those up. You can have 3 or 4 men at arms with 6 archers, and then the other group again mix those up so you can support each other. And archers will fight as well. So it's not that the archers are only good at shooting; they will fight. And in a skirmish, they've got hand weapons; they're capable of fighting as well. The distinction is they're not as well armored, and so that makes them more vulnerable. And there's some interplay there.
Is there a command?
There is, and this is where it gets really tricky. So your command radius is 4 inches. So it's really tight. If your captain has his standard bearer next to him, then that goes up to 12, because obviously they can see the flag. He can kind of generate some wider command and control by, if the flag goes off in one direction, that makes more sense. Yeah. And if you have a musician with you, you may command anything on the battlefield at all. So you can use your musician to order anything on the field, but you must have written that order at the start of the game. So if you want to, I don't know, spring an ambush from the other side of the table, if the scenario fits that, then you grab a guy with a trumpet and you write on a piece of paper, at the sound of the trumpet, this group will do this thing, and then you can do that. So that's your first restriction, because you've only got a few commands. There's very few leaders within your unit, maybe two, maybe 3 in 20 men. You can send individuals to do something, that's fine. But if you do that after your first action with that one individual who doesn't have the leader trait, you lose the initiative and it goes over to your opponent. So getting your leaders in place is the thing that helps you to keep rolling and keep going. The second thing that helps you to keep going is that you have coin. So there's a currency to the game, which I always get referred to as coins. You have a purse of coins, and it starts off at half your leadership trait. We'll get to leadership qualities in a moment, but start off with, say, 4 coins usually. Every time you perform an action, you pay a coin to your opponent. So they start collecting your coins. So you start with 4 coins, pay a coin, do an action. That leaves you with 3 coins. If your action has been led by a leader, if it's been successful, if you still have coins, you get to go again. So you then have 2 coins. And then you go again, then you only have 1 coin. And then eventually you have no coin, your opponent has 8 coins because they start off with 4. So then they have to start paying you back coins. So this is internal sort of initiative loop, which works really well, because you have to work out, do I husband my coins? Do I spend them? You can use coins to try and interrupt that flow. So there's a system by which you can
I
turn
have
around and go, yeah. So at this stage, I need to seize the initiative now. So I'm going to pay my opponent a coin to try and steal the initiative from him or her. So there's this internal loop of initiative going back and forth, plus this opportunity to kind of break the cycle at a key point if you're willing to risk it. That is it's a dice roll as well, so it's not automatic. And then there's an external system as well. So coins can be used to modify your dice rolls for things like seizing the initiative, rallying, a couple of other things. And you pay those not to your opponent, you bid those out to what we call the exchequer, the tax man, the treasury. So you can have coins going backwards and forwards, this closed loop. You have an external loop where you bid coins to benefit your game, but they disappear. And then in close combat, one of the combat outcomes can be to gain a coin. So you can get more coins, you can pay out coins, and then there's this internal loop. And that interplay, and I think it can sound a little complicated and a little nebulous, but actually once you start playing it, you pick it up very quickly. But that interplay of that coin exchange works really well because it's almost a little mini game in many ways.
No, if I'm interrupting again, it's very easy to understand because basically you earn coins by performing actions, for example. So you earn coins for this. You remove coins, give to the exchequer, as you said, in order to boost maybe attack or maybe shooting. But at the same time, it's a very interesting loop because depending on the actions you do, or if you use all your coins, you are at a disadvantage in the next round. So maybe you want to do a specific number of actions so a couple of coins can stay with you. So you will have the ability while your opponent is moving to interrupt his move or to be able to react. This, for me as a gamer, this mechanics it's an extra strategic option that I need. Okay, maybe I want to do 4 actions, but at a critical point of the battle, I will give him all the coins, and then he will have the advantage. So maybe I should do only the 2 critical ones and keep 2 coins for me, so I can have option to react to his attack. So this is another really very interesting game within the rules.
Yeah, and again, you're looking for that. It's that thing of you want to be able to lay out your tactics. You want to be tactical about the game, but at the same time, you don't want players to be able to do everything they want. And I don't. And the either I go, you go. That kind of I do something, you respond. That's fine for some games, but for a skirmish game, I think that sense of just that little bit of fluidity again in the actions and movement, I think really lifts it. And it gets really quite when you get down to small numbers of coins. You're down to maybe 2 or 3 coins, and you think, well, okay, I could steal the initiative now, but I might lose some coin. I'm going to let that roll. Let my opponent carry on. Do I let him just keep going? Or there's a lot of tactical nuance there. There's a lot of there's a lot of really interesting play. It gets quite tense at times, which is kind of fun.
I see here you have also climbing in part of your movement, correct? I see. There is climbing as well.
Yeah. So again, I'm trying to keep it relatively simple. But at the same time, recognizing that when you're looking at that level of small-scale skirmish, you have to take into account the fact that you're going to want to go up. The battlefield isn't flat. You might want to climb over walls or whatever. So movement is done by a dice roll. So what you do is you select your group, you pay your coin to your opponent. You say, right, I'm going to move this group to this point on the table, and you identify the point you're going to move to, and then you roll. Generally, if they're on foot, you roll 2d6. If they're mounted, you roll 3d6. And that's how far they get before your opponent gets that opportunity to try something. So those if you're familiar with Too Fat Lardy's rules, that's their movement system. That's how they run theirs. You identify where you'd like to get to, and then that's how far that unit gets before your opponent has that possible opportunity to interrupt. That's as far as you get. So that kind of fluidity of movement, I think, works really well. So to do that, then what you do is you move the leader figure of the group you're moving. He goes to the point you designated. You then move the furthest figure at the back of the group up that far, and then everything else can move between the two. So you're not having to measure each individual figure's movement. And it allows you that fluidity. So in that group, you could bring some archers forward. If they've been stuck at the back, you've got that opportunity as they move that distance forward to move up. And as long as no one moves further than your designated point, or the guy at the back doesn't move further than his off, then you've got that little bit of fluidity. And again, it's just so that you're removing that sense of these things as units and having to move in the same formation all the time. Yeah, they've got an opportunity there to shuffle around, get themselves in the best tactical position as they move forwards. If you're climbing over walls, if you're going through bad terrain, you will generally lose the lowest of the 2 dice you roll, or the 3 dice in the case of cavalry. So bad terrain just slows you down a little bit. If you're in treacherous terrain and really bad terrain, so if you're wearing full plate armor and you're slogging through a muddy plowed field at, where should we think of, say Agincourt, for example, then you not only lose the lowest dice, but there's always a possibility you become stunned as well. There's that risk of you tripping or slipping or something happening that's going to put you out of action and mean you're going to have to stand yourself up again. So that's movement in a nutshell.
Yeah. And then you do your move, and then we go to what? You perform actions with your units, correct?
Yeah. So a move action is a move forwards. It could result in combat. So if you end up within an inch of an opponent, you start a combat sequence. There is an action for shooting. So you can stand and shoot at your opponents. There is an opportunity shot action. So if you see something move in front of you, you can actually pay your opponent a coin to do a shoot. And so everything that can see that moving group may take a shot at them. It's less effective than a well-aimed shot, but it might just get you, if it gets you a strike or a stun, you gain the initiative because your opponents lost their action, they failed their action, so you can get that sense. So there's that movement. So the main actions are to move, to shoot, or to rally. So if you become struck or if you become stunned in combat, then you can rally your figures around, and they effectively they're back in the game again. You can use them again as part of the group or as individuals. Shooting, basically, if you can see it on the table, you can shoot at it. So there is no maximum range on our 4x4 table. There's no maximum range. If you're looking at a table that's 18 feet long, then we'll put a little restriction in. But generally, you can shoot wherever. And at that range, you roll 1 dice per shooter, and you randomize the hits across the target group. So you can't pick an individual at long range. At 12 inches, you're at effective range, and it doesn't matter whether it's a crossbow or a warbow or whatever. 12 inches is effective range. At that distance, you get 2 dice per shooter, and you can pick targets, because at 12 inches, that's what, about 30 or 40 feet in our sort of scale, and at that distance, archers can pick people off. Now that's great, but what it does mean is players need to start thinking a little less medievally, a little less like a medieval wargamer. I'm just going to ride out, I'm just going to march out in front of you. Because if you stand out in the open at 12 inches range with your leader, and your opponent's got 3 or 4 archers, that means they're going to have 6 to 8 dice, and they can use all 8 dice on that one figure if they want to. Doesn't happen very often. We've been running games at shows and conventions for the last 18 months or so, and a number of times someone has stood their captain out in front of a group of archers, and I've said to the other player, it's like, well, you can use, you've got 12 dice here, you can put all 12 dice on that captain if you want. And they go, oh no, I don't think I will, I'll spread it out. And then you get 1 or 2 really vicious players who go, oh yes, I'll put all 12 dice on the captain, boom, and that's it. Basically, if you're rolling 12 dice, you're going to end up killing. But that's the kind of thing. So long range, randomized across the group. 12 inches effective range, double the number of attacking dice, and picking targets. You identify them before you roll all your dice. So you say, okay, if you've got 6 dice, I'm going to put 3 on this figure, 2 on that one, and 1 on the other. And then at 4 inches, this becomes the sort of panic defense, the O defense, where at 4 inches range, someone is really coming for you. That is 1 dice, and at the closest threat, because it's the guy who's about to come and hit you over the head with something. So and those are your 3 range brands. They're the same whether you're shooting a longbow, a warbow, a crossbow, or even if you're using darts, javelins, slings, they only work at effective range. You can't shoot at long range, but that same range bracket is the same for everything. So again, keeps it relatively straightforward, very quick to pick up the rules. Crossbows have a bit more poke at effective range, because the crossbows for most of the period are slightly more powerful than the bows. They'll carry as far, that's no different, but at that effective range they've just got that little bit more power to pierce armor, so they give you you're at a benefit against armor at that point. But that's shooting. If you perform a shoot action and you strike, i.e. you kill, remove from the table, or stun, so that means they get marked and need to be rallied, then that's a successful action. You get to do something again, and that's how shooting works.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Let me see. So you have strike, stun, shove, shield, feint, and fate. Correct? These are the three. The titles. It's quite very interesting. So, and are you going to have these dice? Are you going to have also customized dice? Because obviously you can play with numbers, but you're going to have produced customized dice, or this is only?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So I'm pleased to say we've arranged to have icon dice. Again, I did this with. I took this on for blood and horse droppings. You have those icon dice for that. I like the use of an icon dice. You can use a d6. Yeah, there are 6 different faces on the icon dice. So 1 through 6. 1 is a strike, 2 is a stun, blah blah blah. But there's something nice about using the icons. And I've said this before, what it happens, and I found it with even the most competitive player, the one who likes to calculate the odds, if you take away the numbers and put on an icon, then suddenly they start playing the game and they stop calculating the odds, and it does something really screwy to a wargamer's brain, and I think it's fascinating. But yeah, so I decided we were going to use the icon dice. They're different from the ones in blood and horse droppings, but they represent, again, because they're representing a skirmish, they're representing that fight, direct fight. So you've got a strike, which is a kill. You've got a stun, which is a stun. You've got a bonus roll, which is the one that gives the purse, which is your coin, and yeah, that's your dice.
Rob, can you go again for the dice, because I lost you there? I lost you in the dice.
No problem at all. Okay, so you've got your 6 faces. You've got your sword, your strike, which is a kill, which is going to take you off the field. You've got a mace, which is a stun, which means you're going to have to rally that figure. You've then got a hand, so a push, a shove, which drives you back. You have a shield, which forms a defense in hand-to-hand combat, in melee combat. You have then a bonus, a sword and shield, a feint result, which acts as a bonus in shooting for crossbows, so it counts as a stun. And then in other forms of combat, it's a reroll, or with certain character traits, you can actually determine what it will be ahead of combat. So you can say, right, in this combat, that roll will be, it could be a strike. Or if you're surrounded by enemies and you need to defend yourself, you could say, well, actually, it's going to count for shields. I need that defensive protection. So it enables the figure with the right ability to just shape the combat. And then the 6th face of the dice is a purse, and that's the coin. So that's when you're in combat, you get that result. That's when you gain that extra coin into your purse, so you can use those for initiative.
Yeah, I get it. And then we have hand-to-hand combat. We work similarly, I can imagine, in a way.
Yep, very similar. So these are opposed rolls. So when you come into hand-to-hand combat, you roll your dice against each other. So you start off with a base number of dice. Usually it's going to be 1 for most of your troops. Your captain might roll 2. A really good warrior might roll 3 dice as a base. You get extra dice for charging. So if you move higher than your furthest dice roll to get into contact, that counts as a charge. You've got that impetus, so you get an extra dice for that. If you gang up, so if you have someone on the flank, that gives you an extra dice. So you build groups of dice up for that. You roll those dice off against each other. You remove those results depending on your armor level. So if you're part armored, you ignore the first strike result. If you're fully armored, you ignore the first strike result and you downgrade the second strike to a stun. So armor protects you from being killed, being taken off the battlefield. It is less good at stopping you being stunned. So whilst armor
Okay.
was great, you can hammer on someone all day and you won't pierce their armor. But if you keep hammering on them enough, they will become stunned, discombobulated. They won't be able to fight as well. So again, it was one of the aspects of the rules I was quite keen to get, was that sense that armor is very good at protecting you from getting seriously wounded, but enough hits, enough blows, and you will become stunned. You will get, you'll need to rally yourself to get back into the fight again. So that's where you are. So having done that, you take off for armor, then you remove for shields. So shields block strikes, then shields block stuns. And then what's left is what actually happens to your opponent. So if you've got a strike result left, they are killed. They're removed from play. If it's a stun result, they get a little marker and they have to be rallied. And that's basically combat in a nutshell.
So one hit every miniature is one hit?
Generally, yeah, but again, within the character traits, and there are a dozen of those that I've laid out in the rules, but people are quite welcome to try to create their own. There is the possibility of having someone who is that bit, that big beefier, the big strong hero character that can take a couple of wounds. So they can take a first win and then that reduces their number of dice. And so, yeah, there's option. But generally, one strike and you're out. 2 stuns.
Okay.
If you mount up a couple of stuns, that counts as a strike and you're out. So again, the rules are can be quite fast and bloody, but I've tended to find that if you are fully armored, you need people to gang up on you. So if you want to defeat a guy in full plate armor, you need, because of the number of dice you're on, you need maybe 2 or 3 guys to kind of climb on top and pummel him into the ground. And again, that feels right. We read a lot in the sources about knights being able to kind of get through battles. It was one of the things that came up early in one of the tutorials I taught with a student, and he asked to stop me during a chivalry tutorial and said, "Okay, this is great. I get that people surrender on the battlefield, but how do you do that? How do you actually do that when someone is hammering at you with a sword or with a poleaxe or whatever? What's the process?" And part of that is that your armor will give you a lot of protection, but eventually you're going to become overwhelmed as people kind of cut you out from the herd, if you like. And it's that ability to get to that point where it's like you're on your knees and you go, do you know what, I've had enough. And so working that into the rules, that sense of how good armor is at protecting, but also how you can be worn down by just sheer weight of numbers, was kind of part of the mechanics I was looking for.
So you can attack with 2 miniatures, 1 miniature. That's what I'm understanding.
Total of 4. So you have the guy to your front, 1 on each flank, and 1 to the rear. So
okay, that's actually very accurate in a way. And you're ganging up, and you may want to attack with lower ranking troops, man at arm, and attacking from everywhere so you can beat him. Otherwise, you will lose. That's an excellent idea. So again, another interesting strategy there is to see how you can attack to your opponent's strongest warriors with more men.
Yeah, and the other thing is, so there is the pushback result shoves you back 3 inches. But if you get someone backed up against a piece of terrain, or if you can get a guy behind him as well and he can't go backwards, he becomes stunned. And if you can get 2 or 3 stuns on him, he can't go backwards, he will be struck, he will be taken out. So this idea that you can kind of really pin a guy down, stop him being able to sort of sneak out of the fight or step back in a fight is really important. The other thing that I've said is, you do not get rear support from your friends. A guy behind you shoving you in the back in the melee to kind of push you on, he's not helping you. He is not helping you at all. What he is getting in the way. So with only one exception, you don't get support from the rear rank, because actually what they are is they're an encumbrance. When you're in a fight, you're going to end up tripping over the person behind you. So I think that was quite, again, that was my sense of, and from my time in reenactment and things like that, was my sense of actually having that guy behind you giving you a shove, that's not helpful. So that's also there in the rules.
I want to ask you, I saw some interesting 2 questions that came up to me, now that we're talking. One, I saw some interesting results when mounted with fighting, that you can follow through in a way. That's what I understood. And the second question I have is, in your retinue, in your 20 men, you can have mounted and foot together, you can mix them.
Yep. Yeah. So again, as I say, within retinues, whatever you want, put them on the table. Obviously, if you put mounted men alongside men on foot, your big issue is going to be your command and control. Yes, who do you put with what? And you're going to have to think very carefully about maintaining that level of command and control. So that's fine. But I'm really keen that in the fluidity of a skirmish, whatever turns up, whatever you want to put on the table, that's great, but you're going to have to work with it. So yeah, we're back to that narrative of picking, perhaps forming your retinues for the right storyline or the right scenario, that sort of thing. So cavalry combat, this came from a friend of mine. This came from my friend Steve Jones, goes by the moniker of Captain General. And he's been looking at the 17th century for a long time. And a lot of what he came about was about cavalry combat there, and the fact that horses don't stop dead. Horses will continue to ride. So when you meet someone in melee, a lot of cavalry combat is actually about them passing through each other. And so I took some inspiration from him there. And when you ride up, you perform your combat, providing you're not locked in some way. What you do is you roll, you continue to move. So you might move you will move the middle of your 3 dice, and you'll move past your opponent. You can try and control that, so you can perform this. So all figures have a quality dice. That can be a D6 for most soldiers, a D8 often for your captain, a D10. If you've got the Black Prince on the table, if you believe his biographer, then you've got a D12, that sort of thing. But you roll against your quality dice. If you succeed, you get 4 or better, then you can control your horse. You can decide whether you stop where you are or you ride through. If you don't control it, then you roll again just to see whether the horse carries on or whether you become to a kind of stationary point in the combat. So again, it's got that sense of a little bit of fluidity, and it's just thinking a little more about how horses behave in real life, and it's getting slightly closer to that without, again, wanting to try and keep it as straightforward as possible. So you're not rolling lots of dice, it's not too random. And I think this is probably as close as I can get without it becoming too cumbersome, the sort of cavalry rules.
Yeah, and it could be a good idea, for example, if you have, 20 men in your unit and you want to have 4 mounted, maybe your commander could be mounted so he can move quickly around and control everybody. So that's an option you have.
Yeah, possibly.
So we talked about shooting, hand-to-hand combat. So tell me about how the game ends, how you lose, how you're beaten in battle or winning in the case of other.
In winning or losing. So morale is relatively straightforward. There are 3 main points where you'll take what I call a faltering check. So a point where your morale breaks and you need to test. If your captain is removed from play, every figure within 4 inches of him has to take a faltering check. So this is your break test, if you like. But it's only within 4, because outside of 4 inches, they can't see, everybody else can't see him, so they don't know what's going on. If your captain's standard bearer falls, everybody outside of 4 inches has to take the faltering check, because they've seen the banner fall, and if the banner falls, it's possible the captain's fallen. Whereas everybody who's actually stood closer to that banner knows it's only the standard bearer who's fallen. You might be fighting to reclaim the standard, but you know your captain's alive and well. So you've got a little bit of sort of situational awareness sort of going on there. And then the other break point, and again, it's about keeping it relatively simple. 50% of your retinue struck and removed from play, that's a break point. And then everything takes that faltering check. Now, a faltering check is a quality dice. If you fail that dice, you move back a full 12 inches on foot and you become stunned. And that's usually enough where players will turn around and go, oh, do you know what? There's no coming back from this. Shake hands, game's over. These are rules not for competition play. This is rules for friends telling a good story. So again, there's no, the sense is that you'll know when you're beat and when the game's over and when it's lost. And that's what we go for. The other way you'll know whether you've won or lost is if you've achieved a scenario objective. And again, this is about telling that story. It's about whatever scenario you've chosen to put on the table, whether you've achieved the objectives, done what you intended to do. There you go. End of game. Told a good story. Shake hands and move on.
Okay, that's so basically it's very accurate in a way that as it happened in the bigger battles of the Hundred Years' War, you know much better than me that you didn't have to destroy your whole army's opponent to finish a battle. I mean, the French lost the major pitch battles, and you know better than me that they have even more men than the English. So, but it was the morale, it was the key figures that died or fled,
Yeah,
and then you lose control of the army, you lose control of the retinue,
that's
you
it.
lose of your men, and it's
Yeah,
over. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I was thinking we'll go. I mean, I'm looking at this um, uh, uh, copy you sent me. Before we continue, is this the final version, or you will update it? What I have here, all there is updates for this coming up.
What you have is the final version of the rules and everything else. I think there will almost certainly be another typo that I pick up, and the photographs have been retaken, so all of the images are being reshot, so they'll be done again. But yeah, what you've got there is
Oh,
effectively the rule set. Yeah, there are no major
no.
rewrites coming.
So we explained how the game ends, and now we're going to traits. You have some traits that
Mm.
can be they are for the leaders, I can imagine, and they're giving some advantages and disadvantages in movement, maybe in hand-to-hand combat. Correct? Is that I'm understanding correct?
Yeah,
So you have like
yeah,
superior warrior, heroic warrior, poacher, audacious, leader, inspiring, etc. Not too many that will become complicated as some games, but you have a good number that won't make the game, you won't lose control and basically become a game of traits.
yeah, yeah. What I was looking for was the ability to put a little bit of character into those 20 figures you've got on the table. And you could say, well, it's only going to be your captains to get it. Generally, I've been saying, well, the captains already have the leadership trait by dint of being of noble birth or gentry or whatever. And I've usually said, well, also you make your captain a superior warrior, gives them 2 combat dice, and sometimes you might make them a little better in combat. So you give them the I'm blanking on what I've called it now. Aha, brain's gone dead. Puissant is the word I've used. So this idea that they can control the combat, so they get to choose what that feint, that bonus dice is. So you've got those traits, you can give them the leadership, got that sense of. But I also wanted to give people the opportunity that any of those figures in that 20-man unit can have a bit of character. So you could have an archer who is a poacher and therefore gets a bit of a bonus in shooting, or is a forester, so is particularly skilled or is able to sneak or something like that. So anything that's going to give a little bit more character to these figures, because we're talking at skirmish level, we're talking about 20 individuals. They're not just faceless men. They will become the ones you want. Yeah. And if you chose to play a series of interlinked games or a campaign, you can build your retinue. You can really kind of grow to love them in a way. But at the same time, as you say, I didn't want there to be too many of these that they take away the game. The game has a lot going on in it anyway, in terms of decision making, the coin exchange, the dice rolls, and I didn't want it to get also too deep into other things going on. So, yeah, you've got a dozen or so traits, and that's all you need. Again, if there's something you want one of your figures to be able to do, by all means, go ahead, create a trait for that. I've been quite careful because it's very easy, I think, when you're doing this kind of thing, to unbalance the game. To give them, say,
Yeah.
oh, I'd really like this figure to be able to do X, and then suddenly they're Superman, or they just throw the whole thing out of kilter. So you've got to be quite careful that you don't overplay your hand a little bit. And I think that through playtesting things, we've got those traits pretty well balanced. So they'll give you a little bit of flavor, a little bit of edge in the right circumstances if you're lucky, but nothing that you think, oh yeah, this is a game changer. If I have this one figure with this trait, he's unstoppable.
Yeah. Every figure has one trait. I can imagine it has, or you can have more if you want.
Yep,
How
you
do you
could
play
have
this?
more. Again, it's very free flowing. So you could have maybe, I mean, your captains generally 2, maybe 3 traits on them, something like that.
Yeah.
But again, there are no. I'm not being prescriptive here. So the instruction is, do what you will with the rules. Here they are. If you want to pile traits onto one figure, that's great. Go for it. But this is about having
Yeah.
fun, about telling a good story. So yeah, most people are going to be sensible with these things and not really go to town. Up to you.
That's a good point. Now I see here in the rules the chivalric deeds. Can you tell me what this is?
Okay, so this was there were two things and there were sort of competing elements within my idea of what a medieval skirmish should be. First one was that a medieval skirmish should be every bit as tactical as a World War II game or a modern skirmish. So you need to use command and control. You need to use cover. You shouldn't be able to march your guys out in front of archers or crossbowmen. So you need to be sneaky. And you need to think tactically, which is not something that a lot of medieval gamers are used to doing. Medieval games tend to be very sort of line them up and let them go. So that was the first element.
Yeah.
The counter to that is that in medieval warfare, and you'll know this from the things you've seen, medieval warriors did really stupid things that made no tactical sense whatsoever, but were absolutely central to their beliefs, their culture, their way of fighting. And what I wanted to do was encourage gamers to play the period as well. And so what these chivalric deeds, and these are optional, you don't have to play with them, they're just nice to have, is if you like, it's a subplot. The six that are in here, have all been taken from actual examples from Froissart, from Sir Thomas Gray. These are actual events that they've been recorded by the chroniclers, so we can assume they've happened. They might have been expounded in the telling. So for example, the first one is the golden helmets of William Marmion. I love this story. William Marmion, he's at a grand dinner and his lady presents him with a golden helmet and says, take this golden helmet, go off to the most dangerous place in the kingdom and do a deed of great chivalry. I think she's trying to get rid of him. And so what he does is he rides up to the Scottish borders. He comes to a castle and Norham on Scots borders, and he says to the garrison commander, I've been tasked with this. I'd like to perform this deed. Scots turn up outside the castle. Garrison commander says, yes, go for it. Put your golden helmet on. Go out and attack the Scots single-handed, but you should do it mounted because all great deeds are done on horseback. So William Marmion rides out against the Scots alone. He drives them back, presumably because they're trying to work out what this idiot is up to. But eventually he gets surrounded. And when he gets surrounded, the rest of the garrison marches out, rescues him, drives the Scots away, and they win the day for the English. Okay. So what you've got here is an opportunity to do something really stupid and brave during the game, providing in this way you say, right, okay, replace your figure with a mounted figure with a golden hat, because who doesn't want to paint yet another knight? And as long as he is the first into melee and the only one of your retinue fighting, you gain a coin per action. So every time you fight, you gain an extra coin. So it gives you a little bit of benefit in the game, but the risk that your captain is going to get overwhelmed and wiped out is huge. So you've got a little tactical choice there. So you're being encouraged to play chivalrically, but it's just possible it'll all go horribly wrong. And then you can determine whether it gets written up in the chronicles as this great deed of heroism or kind of a footnote of then this really stupid guy ran out against the Scots on his own and got massacred. And all of these stories have that element of them. So I'm trying to capture the flavor of chivalry and encourage players to play the period.
Oh, it's very interesting because I'm thinking of your rules and the fluidity of your command and control system. But for example, if me as with my retinue, I see an opening or opportunity that my leader mounted can charge on his own and kill the opponent's leader, you can do it. You can go leave behind your retinue and headlong charge. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe finish it. Maybe it will be decimated, but maybe at the same time you will finish the battle. You know what I'm saying? So
you could win the battle in one fell swoop. Yeah. And medieval knights were forever doing that. Yeah.
For example, in what was it in which battle was it where this English knight attacked Robert the Bruce? Robert the Bruce avoided him and killed him.
Bannockburn. Yeah.
In Bannockburn. If the English knight killed him, the battle is over. Yeah. Correct? So that's kind of and this fluidity of no, this is excellent. Now, after this chivalric deeds, you have and the rules, you have retinue examples. That's obviously very helpful. You have Genoese mercenary company, you have French men-at-arms, you have French or Flemish urban militia, and you have English indentured retinue. And this is good. I think it's always helpful if the author puts retinues. So you have Britain or Welsh gorilla bands. So you don't mind if I give an example to the viewers, if you don't mind. So,
Yeah,
for
that's fine.
example, let's go for a Britain or Welsh gorilla band. So you have one captain who is
Hmm.
part armored, and you have 50 chance of being fully armored. You have one hornblower, you have 12 biduas, and 6 castiliers. Everybody has his own abilities, his own quality dice. D8 for the higher
Yep.
level, D6 for the lower level. You have 2 combat dice for the captain, 1 combat dice for the hornblower, and 1 combat dice for the biduas and castiliers. And then you have the traits, again, very helpful. And so you have examples of retinues here that I think it's always very helpful, especially when the game is new, so people understand the philosophy behind it. It's great for the author to provide, and it's quite variety of retinues here, so they can copy them, or they know, they have them as the basis to create their own retinues.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my thinking. Again, I don't want to be prescriptive. I don't want to say you must have this set of figures. These are very much just if you need a little helping hand in terms of getting a sense of the shape of them. This is kind of what we think they look like at the time. This kind of gives you the sort of balance. Some of them are a little different. So that gorilla band, those Bressons or Welsh gorillas, if that's the way you think of them, I must admit I'm not so sure that the Welsh were quite as rough and ready as this, but we'll let that one pass. There's no standard bearer here. So your command and control is going to be quite difficult because you don't have that banner to kind of extend your captain's command and control. But you do have your hornblower. So you do set an action up ahead of time. So that's going to make some interesting choices. But I've picked some of the traits that give some of those ordinary soldiers that little bit of a leadership of self-assurance, that little bit of self-awareness that they can perhaps kind of overcome the fact that they haven't got their captain right by them helping them out. So I hope that balances out. With the Genoese and with the men French militias, you've got men who are slightly more heavily armored because that's how they were. The urban militias were middle class men for the most part. They were able to provide their own equipment. The English, by comparison, lots of archers. That's what they did. 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratios of what we know from those indentured retinues, but they have relatively little armor. So again, there's hopefully what you've got there is quite a nice balance, but also the right sort of feel for the period.
When you say just for my understanding, because obviously I will playtest the rules, I will show them on the channel. So you say here, for example, the English indentured retinue, you have one captain, as you said, one standard bearer. The English have obviously the percentage of archers is very high, 14 archers and 4 soldiers. When you mention unarmored, 25% chance of being partially armored, what do you mean? The 25% chance.
20% chance that each of those archers might have armor. So 1 in 4 chance they might be wearing a bit more plate. That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I get
so
you.
The chances are that maybe 1/4, if you were really lucky, 1/4 of that force will be slightly better armored. They've come with a skull cap, bit of mail, perhaps a little bit of part plate, something like that.
Good. So this is first. Before I forget it, before we go to the next page, when I posted that I'm going to have this chat, people were sending. I mean, probably you saw it also, but also on the channel here on YouTube, they were saying they were amazed by the artwork of the cover page, and I say it's beautiful. Right? You say, what a cover page! Can you tell a little bit about the cover page?
Yeah, I do. So I'm really fortunate. As I was coming up with these rules, I came across on Instagram the work of a chap called Kez. His moniker is Kez Draws Fights, and he's been doing this kind of cartoon artwork of combat scenes for some time, and they're beautiful. They're vibrant, they're rich, they have a really distinctive style, and it just spoke to me. Part of it came about because he wanted to come take photographs of me in my medieval harness. So we kind of got talking about that. And I asked him, could I commission a piece of artwork for these rules? And he said yes. And we actually came to an agreement. I've been doing some writing for him whilst he's done some artwork for me. So yeah, the cover is done by this guy, Kez Draws Arts. Kesdraw's fights rather, and it's just beautiful, and it just, yeah, like I said, captures the period. So the cover art is the central scene from Cressy. So you've got the blind King John of Bohemia being brought low by a group of English knights, and that's that central theme.
He's from UK. Is it from the UK?
Yeah, he's a UK artist. Yeah. He's well worth a follow on Instagram. You'll find him at reenactments and shows. He's just great.
Just tell him I want to have him in the channel. I want to have him for sure. Ask him if he wants to.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. He's brilliant. Sorry, yeah, he's got that same sense as me. He's got a really good sense of art, but he's also passionate about the history as well. So he's absolutely accurate in his depictions. He goes very carefully in terms of looking at the material, looking at the source material. So
it's a cartoony, but beautiful cartoony way. But if you see it, and I have it behind me here, it's accurate to the letter. You know, historically accurate, exactly. It's excellent.
Yeah.
So tell him if he's interested. I would love to have him. So then we have another very, very interesting part of the rules where you have quite a few number of scenarios here, and interesting scenarios where you show very nice the terrain as a map. And I can. Do you mind if I share this just for people to see the scenarios? Do you mind?
No, that's fine.
Okay, let's share this one. So, okay. So can you see it? Is it shared?
Yep, there it is.
So we have the scenarios here. Very beautiful. I like because you don't have just scenarios written. Obviously, visual representation for me is always important. So you have some very beautiful scenarios with the deployment and special rules, and you also photographs of the scenarios. You have the retinues, and you have the maps, the terrain. So tell me about the scenarios if you don't mind.
Sure. So we have a series of scenarios that are based again around that mid 14th century, based around the Cressy period, sort of. So the first one is a really straightforward introduction. So it's a meeting engagement around a farm. So it allows you to play with terrain. It allows you to get used to the ideas about command and control, and a fight over a pig. Because hey, who doesn't like having a fight over livestock? The next scenario is the one that I picked out, and this I've been quite sneaky here. So this is Breakhorn Manor, which many gamers will recognize as being the quintessential attack on a defended position in 1944. So it's Winter's attack, the airborne attack on the German guns. And what I've done is I've flicked that back to the 1340s rather than 1940s. I've replaced the guns with trebuchets, and I came up with this one. And again, it's about getting gamers to think tactically in medieval terms. So they're looking at what should be a World War II scenario, but are actually using medieval figures and medieval tactics. But they'll need to be as tactically sophisticated as they would do if they were using airborne. So that's the second one. Then we have a mini campaign. So you're using the same table, but you have a ladder of 3 stages. And depending on what happens in the first game, then maybe the next 2 scenarios are slightly different depending on the outcome of the first, and then you've got third.
That's
and the
great.
idea is this is just a bit of a link. And the idea was that I wanted to look at something that was definitely from 1346. So this is based around the idea that Edward III in the Cressy campaign, he marches south. Eventually, the French field army catches up with him. So he turns north and is trying to cross the River Somme. And every bridge that he tries to come to has a French defensive force. And so what we've got here is you're one of his captains who's been sent to scout the bridge. If you scout the bridge successfully, then you might then attack it. If you're not successful, then you have to send another. And so we've got this little bit of a ladder campaign, which enables you to kind of play your companies and again, get to know and love your figures and see them lose some of them, unfortunately. But so there's a little ladder campaign there. And then the final scenario, love that bridge. And then the final scenario I've taken from Cressy itself. Now, in this case, what I've done is you've got this huge battle going on, but I've focused right down in on 2 key events. So if you like, this is this is what Froissart and the chroniclers do really well. They've got this big battle, but then they'll focus down on the actions of one or two key figures, and you'll get this little vignette. And so what we have for this scenario is, if you take the English side, you are an English captain who's been sent to rescue the Black Prince. He had a young Black Prince. He goes off, and he's at one stage he's caught up by the French, and Edward III famously says, "No, let the boy win his spurs." And this is where you're actually being sent to go and grab the lad by the scruff of his neck and pull him back to safety. So that's the English objective. On the French side, I've given you John of Bohemia. So he was John, King of Bohemia. He was in his 30s or 40s. He'd gone completely blind. His son is down fighting on the battlefield. He hears his son is in the thick of the action. He tells his knights that he wants them to lead him into battle so he can strike one blow with his sword. So they tie themselves together, his closest knights, and ride into the fray. And Froissart tells the story really beautifully. He rides in against the English. At the end of the battle, John himself and all of his sort of closest household knights are found dead, still tied together. There's that wonderfully kind of poignant chivalric story there. So this is the French idea. So the French must get John of Bohemia from the edge of the table up to the English, strike a blow, and then preferably get him away again and have him survive. So you've got these two little competing objectives, but it's also, I'm taking this big battle and I'm focusing down on a little aspect of each of those. And I thought that was just quite a nice way to kind of get these big battles that everyone knows and loves in a scenario, into a skirmish scenario, without trying to kind of, what do they call it, bathtub the whole big battle down into a small thing.
Yeah, I get you. That's fantastic. Let me stop sharing. And obviously it's brilliant to have them. And then at the end you have the flow charts. That's very helpful. Initiative flow charts. You have combat flow charts, and you have also a quick reference sheet that helps the players remember things, and don't have to check continuously the rules.
Yeah. The flowcharts are really useful when you're first playing, because there is this process of initiative. It's about paying the coin, forming the group, paying the coin, performing your action, working out whether you keep the initiative. And the same with the combat. You remove dice for this, then you remove more dice for that. And it takes, actually, having played it in a number of conventions and shows, it takes players maybe a turn or two to kind of get to grips with it. And having that flowchart just makes that, but very quickly you'll put that to one side and you won't need to look at it again. The rules I've found players have found are very intuitive and very quick to pick up.
Yeah. So that's, I think that's with a quick referential. I mean, I have to say that from our discussion and reading the rules, it's really, really very, very innovative set of rules. I really like the idea that it's a proper skirmish game, as you described it. It's not a big battle with few miniatures, and that's what most of skirmish games are in the market. I like the idea of the fluidity of the command and control. You can do different things with different parts of your men. I like the dice, the idea of that the morale dice that you have a D8 or a D12 for higher ranking or stronger troops, and the traits are all in a very normal number. You don't get lost in traits. What I was thinking while you were talking is that maybe this battle can become bigger if you have a multiplayer game with everybody has his own retinue. So you can have 3 or 4 retinues from one side and 3 or 4 retinues from the other side. Again, the game is playable. So you can have 60 or 70 miniatures on one side with their own command and control and opposite side. So it can become a little bit of a bigger skirmish game in a way.
Yeah, it can. We found when we've played multiplayer games, one of the things you've got to watch out for is that one player doesn't hog all the glory, and that the other players on his team end up sitting back waiting. So within the rules themselves, there's a little piece in there about multiplayer. And what you do is we worked out, we've tried this back and forth a couple of ways. You combine your purse. So rather than having your own purse for your own captain, you have one big purse for your side. But a player can only perform 3 actions before they must pass down to a fellow to do something. So that's your mix. So you can perform 3 actions, and then one of your friends must get the chance. Now, if you lose the initiative, that resets. And if it resets, that's fine. But the next action taken by your side must be done by somebody else. So the idea is to try. And again, if people want to use that, that's great. It's just a way of encouraging people to kind of think, okay, I've got to remember that I've got a friend here who enjoys playing the game as well. And it's like, yeah, this is fine. Because it's so easy that if you happen to be at that point and you've got that run, you just want to go with it, and your mate spends the next 45 minutes watching you play the game. So we just wanted to kind of offer an opportunity to kind of get players to think, okay, yeah, we need to spread the wealth and give everybody a chance to play. And that's the only thing I worry. If you're talking, as you were, about a game where you've got 4 or 5 players aside on a much bigger table, then obviously you start to think you're actually playing almost a smaller game. And so it might be what you've got is a series of small games, but that will work. And as you said, that will work over a reasonable size. Yeah.
So the question: when will the gamers will expect the rules to be published, and before we close, and from where they can purchase them, and if this is a one-off thing or you have plans of adding stuff to the rules? Just before we close, to give this information to the gamers.
So the rules are all set. They're written. I was up at Beast Towers earlier this week, retaking some of the photographs. The aim is that there will be a sort of a Kickstarter as a pre-launch. So everything is done. Basically the Kickstarter will be, it's the way a lot of Kickstarters are being used now. Is there a way of getting pre-orders effectively?
Yeah,
so we think live with a Kickstarter probably maybe next month. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
So that's soon.
Yeah.
Certainly, we are fairly confident that by the time of the Colours Wargame show at Newbury in the UK in September, you'll be able to come and play a game with me and then go and pick the rules up off the shelf.
Okay.
So everything is made. We've got the dice are ready to go into production. The various tokens, we're working on those. They will be ready to go into production as well. So you'll be able to pick up everything. The guys at Gripping Beast are starting to put together retinue packs. So the idea will be, and if you come into that Kickstarter, you'll be able to pick up rule set, dice, tokens, and toys all in one nice, neat package, which I quite like.
Okay.
So that's good.
That's very nice.
So that's cool. That will be live. I'm really excited by that idea. It's going to be so much fun. As to what follows, if they are successful, and Gripping Beast will continue, are happy to continue, the next step is to shift periods slightly. I want to fight the first Battle of St. Albans from the Wars of the Roses in this set of rules. So if you want to do fighting in built-up areas, Fibua, or fish and chips as it's called, fighting in some hovel, then the rules will do. And I played it through this May for my birthday game this May. Again, following on, I actually laid out a street and running Écorcheurs through narrow streets where your command and control is broken up because you're round the back of a pig pen or coming up a narrow alley which is only one man wide, poses some really exciting sort of tactical choices. So I think what we'll have next is to do a mini campaign with a couple of extra scenarios around it and the rules for, so yes, we're going to have to do gunpowder. So handguns, don't expect too much because I don't think they're that novel, but there will be rules for handguns. Different set of traits, because again, I want to follow, it's the traits that give you the period. So some of these traits will be less chivalric traits and more unchivalric traits, and picking up on all of the sort of treachery and personal vendettas of the Wars of the Roses, and we'll try and get that feel into the rules. So that will be the next expansion. There's a really lovely chronicle, or it's a story, it's The Life of St. Louis by Jean de Joinville, who writes about, so this is Louis IX in the 7th Crusade, so in the 1250s. Xuanvi is there when Louis IX goes into Egypt, and he writes some of the most amazing accounts of small unit combat in the Latin East. So there's part of me thinking that possibly after St. Albans, you might see something that centers around Damietta and the Battle of Mansoura. So there you might get to see some what we might do with sort of mounted archers, some of the Eastern combat culture, military culture, see how that shapes. So that may be where I go next. But I don't know. I mean, there's so much there. And I'm also keen for players to kind of come up with their own scenarios, look at their own areas. I know one of the guys I've been talking to sometime, he's in Eastern Denmark, and he's talking about all the things that are going on with the Hanseatic League and that area and that sort of thing, and he's fascinated by that. So yeah, there's plenty of scope to go with stuff here.
Yeah, that's a lot of areas that you can. I mean, if you have time, you can do so many. So we talked about when the rules are coming approximately, and where the guys can find them. What's coming up in the future? Before we close, do you have anything we missed? You want to say anything I forgot to mention? Anything you want to say to the guys who was watching us? Anything that I missed or you missed?
I don't think so. I think that's been you've always got a page by page blow of the rule set, so I think that's quite good. Basically, if you're the sort of gamer and you've played Saga, you've played Bill Hooks, you've played Lion Rampant, and you're thinking, why do I need another set of Wargames rules? Why do I need another set of medieval skirmish rules? Hopefully, what you've just heard is an indicator of just how these are, again, different. Each set of rules does a great thing in its own way. I've enjoyed playing Saga and that dice building system. Lion Rampant is a great pickup game for a night, very easy on the eye, very easy to put together. Écorcheurs, again, just takes the medieval period and does it slightly differently. So I think, yeah, if you're looking for something that's slightly different, you're looking at another way to use those same figures, the rules are there and good for you too.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Rob, thank you so much for joining me again.
Always
Hopefully
a pleasure.
We'll talk again. We need to talk. I need you one day when you're free. I know you're very busy. I need you one day. I want us to talk about Poitiers. I want us to talk about Poitiers. What happened? I have, because I'm going to fight the battle this summer, and I'm doing some kind of research and everything. I always knew. I always had one question because I'm reading from different, sources. Did the Black Prince try to escape, or it was a feigned flight? I couldn't answer this. Nobody's answering this to me. So you need to answer this to me.
Okay, I'll go away and hit the sources, and I'll come back to you with a less than definitive answer.
Yeah. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining me. I love the rules. I will do a flip rule next week after we post the interview. So, guys, the rules maybe next month will be available on Kickstarter, and you said in a convention maybe. So, in the next few months, for sure, they will be available. Rob, thanks again, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.